All systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, and we're back for a Saturday edition, special edition, 3-game slate here on the SHIPIT Nation YouTube station. Do us a favor on the way in, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We're up to almost 9.2K now, so once we get to 10K, we are giving away a $1,000 all-access membership with Shiptimizer. Got Hoopster here with me, got Title. Been a good little holiday season here, and we got the momentum rolling. Hoopster, I'll bring you in first, but fun 3 games, staggered slate today. What's going on, my man? How you doing?
Yeah, I think I'm due. Title had the win, NBA win middle of the week, Christmas Day, I believe. You had the win the other day, so I think it's my turn either today or tomorrow. I'll take tomorrow though. I'm in that.
On Christmas Eve too. Or I think it was Christmas Eve. Rio got his, but it was like 22, 20, 20, bunch of 20K scores across the board for the team here.
Yeah, the squad's heating up. Like I said, I'll take my win, but I actually kind of prefer it tomorrow because I'm in that FanDuel live. Well, I guess not a live final, the FanDuel final, 100 people, $1 million up top. So I'll take my win tomorrow. You guys can double dip and take it down today. I take tomorrow, and we'll keep this heater rolling. But no, it's been a good run for the team. Hard work pays off, and I always say, like, surround yourself with good people, and good things happen. And I'm seeing a lot of that over here at SHIPIT Nation, and going to look to continue. And man, these 3-game, 2-game slates. I mean, the NFL. It got me thinking. I wonder at some point if they extend this a little bit, where they're stretching out the schedule, because it's so stupid for the NFL, who just owns anything on TV. They put anything on TV, they're going to own it. They said 75 million people watched the Christmas Day games. Just makes you wonder if they're ever going to permanently stretch out the schedule. It's so stupid to have like 80% of their games on one day on Sunday. So curious to see if there's any long-term ramifications of the success they've had with these off day games. But it makes it fun for DFS. And we'll have a lot of these in the playoffs. A lot of Saturday 2-game, 3-game slates. Content wise, I kind of said it, made the joke. It makes it a little bit difficult, especially when you have a small team. But we're grinding our ass off and making sure we get everything up for you guys nice and early, and focused in on all these slates. But looking forward to today. 3-game slate, solid games, and excited to talk through it with you guys.
Yeah, I'll bring Title in here, but I'm trying to save it maybe a little bit for tomorrow too. 2 million up top in the 33 mega, got 5 seats for that one. So hoping that some of the, close calls and other stuff leads to that. But Title, you had a big win the other night, very close to the top of the boards in the NBA streets. Good night in the football streets as well, just right there with everything. So you're coming up on another big one too, I think. What's going on, man? How you doing?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, never can complain, but the real people out there, it's so top heavy, especially when you play a lot of cheese in there. 1 bucket for an extra 40K would have been nice. I thought I was a favorite for a second, but with all that being said, I ran really, really good to get there, like you always have to in those fields. So definitely won't complain. Shout out Rio. I got it done, and you got it done. Yeah, I think Hoop, you win in 100 people, 1 million. I would take those odds any day. So good luck to you tomorrow. But yeah, an interesting 3-game slates. The stagger time's always nice. In terms of the spreads, all pretty close. The Rams favored by 7. Just hope we don't get any Thursday night football. No, I did not, and that's not going to happen. So as long as Pop Stoner's not here, no one can tell. How he could tell, I still want to play it back. And I went to my brother's house who has like a 70-inch TV, and we couldn't see it. So I don't know what that dude's on.
I think he just was maybe calling out like he would expect that it's a possibility, and he got in our heads, and we were like, oh, shoot, and there actually was dust, and we were like, damn, and now we got. That's what probably happened, but I like that call. I mean, the other night, like you said, you were so close there. And then, the same in mine. It was like if they just bat the ball down, it was 50K more. But like you said, that's what we about to realize. It is top heavy. The nobody cares where Carter stems from. We were still lucky to be there. If he completes that pass, they could kick a field goal, go to OT, and I lose everything. So you got to be thankful for what you've got. Move on. There's always another slate. To Hoop's point, we got one right here. We're going to break it all down. I love this slate. It's staggered. It's tricky. And to Hoop, I'll kick it to you for the grand scheme overview, because right off the hop, the chat's already talking about it. Happy J.K. Dobbins Day, right? Activated. He's 4K stone minimum on FanDuel. We usually save that for the end. But even at 5,800, not a bad price over on DraftKings. And then
nobody really in on these quarterbacks on the first game. And again, you're kind of thinking of it as the whole slate, but the first game is important as well. So give your grand scheme overview for the whole thing first, and then we'll do the same with title and then get into the game by game, or position by position, I should say, since it's a 3-gamer.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice from the perspective that even though, the first couple quarterbacks don't look great in Justin Herbert and Drake May, they're still like playable though. Like you can make the case they're not super nasty. We've had some of these slates where the quarterbacks are really nasty, and I like to make the stand and just fade some of these guys. All 6 are playable, so I know right out of the gate that ownership is going to get pretty spread out, and that does indeed look like the case. I'm guessing all these quarterbacks are at least 10% owned. So if you do make a stand on a quarterback, you are potentially, we always say it like, eliminating the rake potentially. If a guy's 10% or above and you just fade him, like you're giving yourself a angle, more pass essentially to the top. So everyone's going to be owned. It's going to be spread out. Gives us the opportunity to take some stands if we want to. People that, where you will take the stands, and most likely in that first game at quarterback. Running back is pretty difficult. I mean, we have some key guys up top, but it falls off very quickly. We have Chase Brown, we have Kyron Williams, and then James Conner, who is questionable but going to play. They have nothing to play for, so that's interesting. Then you have J.K. Dobbins coming back, and the big thing with Dobbins is they ruled out Gus Edwards, so you have to imagine they're throwing him right into it. It didn't seem like the injury was all that serious with Dobbins, so I think he's probably 100% ready to go. Maybe kick off some rust at the beginning, but I think he's totally fine. Should get essentially the full workload right out of the gate. And again, the injury didn't seem too serious. They sat him for 4 weeks, and I imagine he's back, but it does fall off. There's not much value at running back. And, outside of the Patriots wide receivers, not much value at wide receiver. And then you go to tight end, and it dries up very quick. There's just not many tight end plays. The last couple, the Christmas Day slate and the 2-gamer, the same 4 teams played, there was like 6 tight ends that we wanted to play today. Not the case. So it does make it challenging just from an overall number of appealing options, I'd say. So I think that's the main challenge on this slate. Like there's just not a ton of running backs. There's not a ton of wide receivers, and there's very few tight ends that you want to play. So that is the true challenge of the slate.
Yeah. And I think injury wise, title, I'll kick it over to you, but we got the Higgins news. Good. We got Connor. Good. It actually looks, and we got the Dobbins news we just talked about. It actually looks like we still won't know this tight end Chargers news until inactives, because I think both Hayden Hurst and Disley were questionable to play. I don't know if you saw more on that. I see from an hour ago, still both questionable, but we'll get those inactives 90 minutes before. Anything else you've got with injury stuff? If not, your grand scheme overview for the slate.
Yeah, it looks pretty clean. I think Disley will play. Hurts is pretty much irrelevant to me anyway. Yeah, what Hoop said, I mean, there's only 5 skill position players priced over $7K, which is very interesting and will lead to a lot of concentrated ownership. A lot of it, Bengals, Jamar Chase, Chase Brown, who kind of talked about the lack of depth at the running back room. Nobody has a better running back role right now than Chase Brown. So when we go through, I mean, and if you guys aren't a member, I always love pulling up the stone. It helps breaking down the slate, color coding, the ownership projections, everything right there. Yeah, you can definitely see like running back room definitely falls off. I will say there is some value because like Patriots, Denver, 2 tight ends are always viable if you do kind of want to jam in studs that way, but kind of more condensed. We talk a lot of 2-game slates. We don't have a lot of 3-game slates. So it's a little different game. It's not quite as dupe game theory like the showdown, but it's still more so that way than it is a classic slate. But you still want to tell yourself a story on a 3-game slate, whether 1-game bust like we saw, the Mahomes Steelers game, the second game just blew out. If you tell yourself stories, that's kind of how I like to approach these 3-game slates. But yeah, I'm excited to dive in, and I always feel a little better after the show talking through it, a more clear vision.
Yeah, I meant to go back. Hoop and I, we didn't hop on a show since then. We did that little 2-gamer, but Hoop, those wide receivers, 65, 45, 37, Kelsey 30, they kind of, it's weird. They ended up being in like the lineups that you needed on that day, because we were like, how are all these receivers have the worst props ever? But almost none of them beat their props. It was just more of, the way it worked out with, Mahomes going crazy and the touchdown stuff that went their way, and then how the second game went, being that it was a blowout, but still pretty interesting. Anything to add on there with that? And then if not, you can go into Chargers Patriots here.
Yeah, no, nothing to really add on. I mean, the one thing with these smaller slates is you do have some margin for error. I mean, we've seen it where at least one bust has been in these lineups essentially, so you don't have to be perfect. Which is nice. So you want to go game by game then?
Actually, sorry, you're right. You could call. Let's pull up the dry run here first, and you can talk about quarterback. That's probably the best way. I always forget. But I think honestly, it is better just from doing enough of these shows over time. We typically agree on that it's
on the smaller slates.
You can have the game theory conversation. Like I guess the reason I said the first game thing is because here's the quarterbacks, but there's no quarterbacks from the first game showing up. It's heavy on Bo Nix, and the only thing I was going to ask you about is with the Dobbins stuff. Does it even make you consider Herbert? Because going back to what Title just talked about, telling a story, some game theory and whatnot, if everyone's going to be interested in J.K. Dobbins on both sites, is there value to trying to figure it out, especially if the target tree gets shrunk down? If it is just like a McConkey, Quentin Johnston, Disley, Palmer, pick 2, does that feel any better going to Herbert, or do you just like sticking to some of these 4?
Yeah, I guess the one thing we should point out, which I don't think we touched on yet, is J.K. Dobbins is the minimum price for a running back on FanDuel at $4K. And, they probably weren't anticipating being activated, obviously, when they put the price tags on the players, but he is the minimum price on FanDuel. He is going to be massively, massively owned. I just did want to pull. Yeah, I mean, definitely not a lock button play. I mean, if he goes out and gets 10, and he's going to be 80% owned. Like it's even if he gets like 8 or something, I did want to see, we have him. 85% we're showing ownership. So he's going to be massively owned. So there is some game theory talk around him and FanDuel. And we'll talk about that when we get to the running back position. But this dry run shows that people don't want to play the quarter. If you just go in and run an optimizer, you're not going to get much Drake May or Justin Herbert. And that is kind of the talking point I say, but I want to take it back to the original point that I made when we started talking about this. They're still going to be at least 10% owned. We're showing the lowest owned quarterback, and that is Drake May, right around 10% owned. So there is still 10% ownership going to Drake May. We're showing Justin Herbert 12%. So you're talking slightly above 20% on these quarterbacks. So they're still going to be owned. And you look at the more popular plays, we're showing, Joe Burrow at 22 and then Bo Nix right around 22. So if you don't play these guys, it's still a move. Like you're still making a move and you're eliminating a lot of the field if it isn't Drake May or Justin Herbert. So I haven't fully decided what I'm going to do. I might end up playing like one of these guys, fading the other, but it will definitely be, some of my lower owned quarterbacks on this slate. I mean, the New England stuff, I just really struggle. I mean, you look at the pass catchers with associated with Drake May, and like I just really struggle to see where he beats. And you got to beat him too. I mean, he's going to have to beat him. He's going to have to beat Burrow, Nix, Murray, Stafford. I do kind of like Stafford today at a very similar price tag. So I just struggle with, coming up with the scenario in my head where he does beat those guys. So he's definitely my least favorite. And then Herbert, like, I don't know, this could just be an ugly game. I mean, the one thing I will say about Herbert, they do have a pretty solid team total. I mean, their team total's sitting right around 24, which is the, third highest on this slate. So maybe a little bump to Herbert, but either way, I could see this being an ugly game. I could see it being Chargers kind of getting back to that grinded out, nasty mentality that we saw early on in the season. So those two are by far my least favorite, and we'll see. I mean, I think you really do need to like make a stand though. Don't play everyone right around that 10% number or above. I think you got to do something. It doesn't have to be with Herbert or May. It could be someone else. Maybe you don't like Kyler Murray. Maybe you don't like Matthew Stafford. I'd recommend, if you're playing a bunch of teams, though, to make a move, make a stand at the quarterback position. That's the best way, I think, to get different on these smaller sort of slates. So those two are definitely at least favorite. My favorite's definitely Burrow. I mean, they just will throw the ball in any close game. They'll continue to throw. So many ways to go about playing Burrow. You can play him with Chase Brown. He dumps it off to Chase Brown a ton. You can obviously play him with Higgins, Jamar Chase, Yoshi, Gesicki, totally fine. So Burrow is by far my favorite, and I'm glad that there's a $1,000 difference because you can see it on the dry run like the optimizers want to go a little bit cheaper at quarterback because we do have spends at running back. We do have spends at wide receiver. So I think Joe Burrow's ownership does get held in check today because of that $1,000 and the lack of value. That's a spot I'm looking to definitely make a move is with Joe Burrow. And then I like Bo Nix on the other side. I like Stafford, and Kyler is the other one that's somewhat of a question mark. And we were talking a little bit before the show, and I am going to probably lean into this a little bit. And it's, very subjective. I mean, there's no objectivity to it, but they're out of contention here. It just seems like a spot where Kyler will just go off and, go out there and kind of go off when there's nothing on the line and the game is meaningless for the Cardinals. So honestly, for that reason, I'm keeping them in my player pool, whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah, we said we'd pay to find out if you've been paying all season. The hoopism, if you will, where he talks about if you've been playing him all season, kind of got to keep rolling it. And he just made a good point as to why. Title, I'll kick it over to you. Thoughts on quarterback. Who broke it down pretty good, but specifically that first game, I think is interesting just to talk about because they're missing, and then what you see the slate as a whole at the quarterback position here as I've got it up on the screen.
I'm pretty much lockstep with Hoop. Most people watching probably play 20 teams or less. I wouldn't play either Herbert or Drake May. If you're looking at the stone, both the defense in the first game had the highest pass rating or pass defense. These other games, not great. The worst weather on the slate by a little bit. Games in Foxborough, I tend to play a little more gross. I will say I do prefer Herbert on FanDuel because of the Dobbins inflated ownership, because of the misprice. You get even more leverage from him. He will be popular in DraftKings too, but even way more on FanDuel. So if I was to play Herbert, I'd prefer him over there. But, I love Joe Burrow. I'm pretty much lockstep with Hoop. Bo Nix, there's a lot of ways to play him. He does have some rushing upside, and he has, Sutton, obviously is solid, right in the 6.3K, but Valet and Mims, both of them are very solid price tags that doesn't break the bank, and you need savings on this slate. And I like Kyler. Kyler's 3, and then Stafford would be 4 for me. I love the rushing upside. James Conner being beat up, maybe you can drop a couple more dropbacks for him. And you have multiple ways to go, like Trey McBride, a complete stud out there. His ownership has to be in check because a lot of people want to save at tight end. And then other, like Marvin Harrison, in check. Michael Wilson, there's just not many of his pieces getting too much ownership. So it's really easy for me. Burrow, by far my favorite. Nix and Kyler, I like the rushing upside a little bit. They can break a slate. And Matthew Stafford, I'm definitely fine with. But it's been tough for me because, it's Puka and it's just Puka. Like, clicking Cooper Kupp right now is really difficult for me. Of course, if I am playing Stafford, Cooper Kupp would be the one. But, I don't want to click DeMarcus Robinson. I don't want to click Tyler Higbee. Kyron and Stafford really doesn't seem like the best pairing to me because usually when Kyron gets there, it's on the ground. Stafford's not getting there. So a really easy Burrow in a tier of his own. Then I got Kyler, Nix pretty close. Stafford, and I don't love Herbert or Drake May much. So, yeah, they are the lowest owned, but we still got them over 20%. Like, if they don't make it, you will be very happy not playing any.
Yeah, this, Bradley, shout out to you, put up what Hoop kind of mentioned there, right? Big misconception this time of year. There is a lot of motivation stuff that you can focus on, especially main slate tomorrow, things like that. But people do tend to fade the teams with nothing to play for when realistically they still have contracts to play for. They feel a little looser. There's not as much stress on the line for out of it. It sucks. It's not ideal, but they kind of can just let loose. And that's what he's talking about with Kyler. So certainly agree with that. This would be a thing, Thrifty, like it might be new to the channel, but we definitely do less of the specific telling you how or who to play and more of teaching you how to play. So that's kind of the setup there is where we're going to talk through a lot of scenarios, let people sort of take what they can from it, but it's your money. We want you to put it down in your own way. We're giving you all the ideas and concepts around it. And one that I had...
Was he referring to what I was saying? Because I'd say out of anyone that like 150s, I'd take more stands than anyone at the quarterback positions. I've commonly just faded quarterbacks. You'll see a lot of people that play 150. They'll play all of them and sprinkle them in. So just kind of talking through it. Like I most likely am fading 1 to 2 of these quarterbacks, and it's probably in that is it the first game? Yeah, the first game, where it's the Chargers and Patriots, and I'm just hoping it's a 17-10 sort of game. So most likely I'm not playing either of those quarterbacks, but just kind of talking through it. The big thing is looking at the ownership. And, what does a fade look like? If those guys are 3% or 5%, it's a different conversation. They're coming in at 10%. to 12%, which is the rake number on this slate. And then you combine it together, you're talking 22%. And I definitely wouldn't say that, like all the quarterbacks. I mean, I just told you I don't like Herbert or May. And the good point that Title brought up, he's always our weather guy on this show, is it's the only game that does have weather, and it's rain, chance of rain throughout, which, it's not like a deal breaker, but can move the needle and can be enough to kind of push you over the edge on some of those decisions.
Yeah, I like that call. And some main slate news, interesting news, so I will say it, is Chuba Hubbard placed on the IR. So no Chuba for tomorrow, which is something we were just talking about this weekend for this game. So coming up. But going back to this one, my quarterback takes, just a couple of them, because it's not different completely, but just different ways to use them. One thing I think about is the Stafford versus Herbert one. What I would like about Herbert is the leverage you would get off J.K. Dobbins, but I do still like Stafford. I like Demarcus Robinson. He still gets it inside the red zone, end zone, can catch a touchdown. He's super cheap on DraftKings, and I like Puka, to Title's point, it's kind of the only guy it's been. So I'll try and play it up that way. I can fit in a Chase Brown. I can move some pieces around to still get focused on the other game. So I definitely like Stafford. Love Burrow with you guys, but here's the only thing I came around on overnight that I want to talk about quick is not many people are playing Drake May at all. He doesn't pop up in the thing at all, in the dry run or anywhere really for that matter. He's lower owned. It's like Hoop said, he'll get maybe 8 to 10%, but that's, that could be the rake. But I will build some lineups with him because it's really hard to get Burrow with Chase Brown and Jamar Chase and still get a nice lineup. So one thing you could do is, if Chase is still needed, and Hoop, you've talked about this plenty in the past, it's only a 3-game slate. The raw points will matter so much more than is it actually a 40-point Jamar Chase game that you need to have. So if you still need Jamar Chase, but you also need Brown, who would cut into him a little bit and could cut down Burrow a little bit, what about Drake May with like a Drake May, Chase Brown, Jamar Chase? Because then I could get the Burrow output or very similar from him. He actually runs it a little bit. He can move on the ground. I can still fit in those other pieces and be able to get a better lineup. So I am going to have a little bit of Drake May now that I come around on it. But these are the 4 guys that I liked. I've been playing Kyler Murray. I love Stafford and Burrow. Bo Nix is higher expected. Like the optimizer wants to give more Bo Nix than I want, but I get it of the back and forth in that game. I just have a little bit more love for the final game of the day. I like the Rams and the Cardinals a little bit more. Hoop, anything else you want to add there?
No, I think very, very strong points for sure, and I think we kind of all agree at the quarterback position for the most part. And it's, you go in and you run teams and you start messing with stuff, you're probably going to get a little bit of everything. I know our dry run, I mean, this is without putting any input in it. So when you do start going in there and messing with things, you're going to get some of every quarterback. So definitely keep that in mind. I mean, we're showing big push to Bo Nix, but for me personally, I'm hoping the lack of value and the $1,000 between Joe Burrow and the next guy in line is enough to keep the ownership in check. And that looks like the case. I mean, that definitely looks like the case. I mean, we're showing 22%. And if that number gets even a little lower to like that 20% range, I'm going to be loving that today, because I've been riding this Burrow stuff for a few weeks now. And, today could be the full explosion spot, because they do have probably the most to play for on the slate. I mean, they're still in playoff contention, not likely, but this is a must-win game for them, like must win. They're going to do what's been working, and that's passing the football.
Yeah, I agree. So just going through it here on before we go to running back quick, just another thing I want to show off over at SHIPIT Nation, because we brought up, this is SHIPTimizer, our optimizer. That's something else you can use too, Hoop, that you just talked about there with the stacks breakdown. You can start to see, okay, it's giving me a bunch of Bo Nix, but what does that look like? Bunch of lineups with Sutton and Mims. When not Sutton and Mims, just Sutton. It still likes Vile as the next person up over Mims. So you can kind of see it as you're breaking it down and what those look like. And it looks like when it is going to Burrow for the full stack, it can get Chase Brown and Jamar Chase in. You just need to overstack it and add Gesicki to make it work. So tons of different ways you can use this and to look at it. Let's move to running back though, and I'll stay with you, Hoop. Chase Brown, talk of the slate, because obviously, the setup of his price, the only 3 games, and we've got him on the stone as probably the highest optimal in a while, at least. So, just talk about Chase Brown and the rest of these running backs.
Yeah. So, we talked about it. You have a few guys at the top in regards to the pricing spectrum that are the most appealing running back plays of the slate. Chase Brown, definitely number one, and he's got one of the best roles in the NFL. I think Title kind of mentioned that earlier. I mean, just does everything. He can catch passes. You can play him with Burrow, even on main slate stuff, like we've been talking about it. Like you can play him with Burrow. So on a 3-game slate, you can definitely play him with Burrow. I think he's definitely the highest owned. Want to jam in and get as much Chase Brown as possible on the slate. So dynamic. I mean, such a dynamic player. After him, Kyren Williams, they're favored by basically a touchdown at home. His workload is absolutely insane. I mean, it's been the Puka Nacua, Kyren Williams show essentially for the Rams, and that probably doesn't change today. I mean, 23 carries last week, 29. They'll give him whatever it takes. I mean, they'll give him whatever it takes to win the football game. They are almost locked into a playoff spot. They're not fully locked in. They need to win. I mean, this is a game that they need to win, so they're not going to be messing around at all. That's why I really like them as a team on the slate. They have about 81% chance right now to get in. So, like, they're still playing for something. They're not locked into a playoff spot, which is nice. And they're going to go with what's worked in the past. And it's been a lot of Kyren Williams, and it's been a lot of Puka, who we'll talk about at the next position. But it's clearly those two at the top for me. The James Conner stuff is, to me, the toughest situation to figure out at the running back position, because he's right there priced with those guys, Chase Brown, Kyren Williams. I do think he gets squeezed a little bit in terms of ownership, because people are going to prefer Chase Brown and Kyren Williams over him, and rightfully so. I mean, I do think they're much better plays, but you can play him as well. But I think his ownership definitely is going to get squeezed a little bit. Had the Q tag all week. They said he's going to play. Their team has nothing to play for, though, like we talked about. So I don't know. Like, what you do with James Conner is tough. I mean, I most likely will have an underweight approach on it. I'm not going to fade him. I'm going to play him, but it's probably going to be underweight. I just have to play Chase Brown and Kyren Williams over him. So I'm not going to sacrifice any shares of those two to get James Conner. So I got to see what it looks like when I go build those teams. J.K. Dobbins, we talked about, the 4K price tag on FanDuel, 85% ownership. Like, people are asking in chat, is he a lock? No, I don't think he's a lock. Like, he has a floor. I mean, he has a single digit floor. It's not a slam dunk situation. He is coming off an injury. I'm not super concerned with that, but like, it's not a lock button play to me, I don't think. I mean, I'll go in and build my teams, but it's tough because it's like you can't really get overweight on him at 85%. I mean, the only way you get overweight on him is basically to hit that lock button, and I don't think I want to hit the lock button. But on DK, 5,800, totally fine with him. I do like him quite a bit. And then it does fall off pretty quickly. I mean, Ramondre Stevenson, I don't love. He's probably in the pool. Antonio Gibson has been getting some work at 52. Javonte Williams, 54. McLaughlin at 47. People were asking about Vidal in the chat, 4,800. It's like all those guys, Stevenson, Gibson, Javonte Williams, McLaughlin, Blake Corum. I don't know. Like, none of those guys I'm super excited about. I mean, I'll probably play some of them, but it will be a small number. I'm not going to be like overweight or taking a big stance on any of those guys. Whatever I get in my teams, I'm kind of fine with, but I don't love any of them. I mean, this position for me is definitely about Chase Brown, Kyren Williams, and I do like Dobbins on DK, then obviously on FanDuel. But what you do with James Conner, I think, is pretty important on the slate. And it is tough, though, because like, he's priced right there. He's $200 cheaper than Chase Brown and $100 cheaper than Kyren Williams. And it's very difficult, at least for me, and maybe you guys have a different opinion on it, but it's very difficult for me to prefer him over Kyren Williams or Chase Brown.
Well, biggest thing, and I'll kick it to you in a sec, Title, but you could start the slate with 40 or 50% Kyren Williams, and you could end with 20% and a bunch more James Conner, because it's $100 less and a 1-for-1 late swap if you're behind. So you know who's going to be lower owned. It's the last game of the day. That's why when I always stress people, like, you're thinking about the whole slate, because it's important. What you want to do on the whole slate is helping you set up for what you're going to do in that first game. But that's how you sort of end up with what you end up on in the first game. And then you should be looking at, especially on a staggered slate, what the adjustments are. How many options do you have? Where can you go with it? It's very tough. Shout out to our guy Kenny in here, but he's right. I would not want to be a one lineup single entry player today. The slate, you could be dead on arrival. J.K. Dobbins is done. Okay, maybe he's a blocker, but it ends up being Herbert or Drake May that goes off in the first game or something, or a Hunter Henry that not many people have, and those that do are way ahead of you. So it's going to be a tricky slate. I would want to have more of a portfolio approach. I do, luckily, but Title, what's your thoughts on that? And then you can take us into the running back as well.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you touched on that. And I don't want to hammer that guy again, but a lot of the sharpest people, they play 150. They do play every quarterback, especially on a 3-game slate. Why? Because you're playing 150 teams. The reason to play more teams is to diversify your portfolio more, and each lineup is independent to each other. It tells the story. So I personally sometimes think Hoop goes too overboard and gets too tight sometimes. Now, when he does it, and you're right, you're always at the top, but then sometimes you're cannibalizing yourself up top. So I think the right play, if I had 150 teams, no way I'm fading any quarterback. I understand most people don't do that watch the show, play 5 or less, 10 or less. That's why I do try and make these player takes. But sometimes if I am playing a lot of teams, they're in my lineup. Today, I think Chase Brown's a lock. If you are playing 10 teams or less, there is by far no running back that has a better role than him. He's still priced around Kyron, Connor, but it also comes back to the running back room is just so weak today. Like the Patriots, Stevenson has fumbled, 7 times this year, coming off another fumble. Gibson outsnapped him last week. So that's a timeshare. Broncos, Julian McLaughlin's back this weekend. That's a timeshare. What's going to happen? You go to the Rams. Love Kyron Williams. Of course, Chase Brown we talked about. Chargers, Dobbins looks solid, but still a little unknowns there. And for the Cardinals with James Conner, I love what you said about the late swap stuff, but I don't know how. It's really hard for me to click that button with Kyron and Chase Brown right in that range. They needed to win last game. And Connor was nuking. He didn't play the whole second half. So clearly there was something bothering him because they, again, needed to win that game. He was going off. I'm surprised to see him playing this week. It just doesn't really make too much sense to me. And he has a real price tag. Late swap wise, totally get it. I mean, you got to embrace it. He's plus 100 to score. 52.5 rushing prop is solid. Kyron's 92.5. Chase Brown, I think 74.5 with a good receiving prop. I just think running back room is really easy. We're going to get to receiver, even tight end. So many more options right there. Running back, simple. Lock Chase Brown. And again, you don't need to lock him. I just think he's by far the strongest play. Kyron's really strong. Dobbins is really strong. And from there, I don't even know. Gibson, I want to say Gibson, Stevenson, and Javonte would be the other ones just because they're way cheaper and it gets you on a different roster construction-wise. But it's a lot of guesswork. Again, is Gibson the starter now because he outsnapped them and Stevenson's been fumbling? Maybe. He has some solid pass-catching ability too. I do think I lean into the Gibson-Stevenson stuff more than Javonte with McLaughlin and them coming back. But really easy for me. I don't like 3 running backs nearly on this slate too much. I prefer double tight end, 4 receivers. You have more value there. I don't like value at this position. Chase Brown, pick one of Dobbins and Kyron for the most part. If you feel good about Gibson, Stevenson, Javonte, sure, and then move on. So that's how I find it, really easy.
Yeah, and I like how you talk about it. Like you said, this it is true. Not everyone plays that with me. I get a ton of people talking about this, sending me emails, DMs saying hey, a lot of the content is geared towards MME. I only play this. It's pretty clear cut though. And Title, I think, does a great job of saying if I got 10 lineups, if I got 20, trying to frame it up. But in the end, you have to make the decisions based on all the scenarios you hear. If you say, well, honestly, I know I'm going this route with it, then that's what you're going with. And you just sort of go, I did an interview with Billy Wagelman, the stat ATL guy on X. He said this, he said, go in your own lane, go 100 miles an hour and be willing to lose. The benefit of that is if it hits, you're in really good shape. Maybe you get to the Autobahn and things just open up and boom, you're on your way to the trophy counter and get your first place. But if it doesn't, you can get back on another track the next slate. When you only have one lineup, you are going to have to make tough decisions. It's not easy, but hopefully these ideas and concepts can give you ways to angle it against. And remember, there's a difference between single entry and playing one lineup in a tournament of 150 maxers. If you have one lineup and everyone has 150, don't be playing the same lineup they're all playing because they've got you covered in so many different ways. It's going to be tricky for you to get all the way to the top.
That's why
it's different.
contest selection is so important too. I mean, everyone we talk about all the time, but people look at those big top heavy tournaments and that's what they want to play because they see the 300,000 to first place and if they're playing one team. All right, I'll just put my single bullet in that. Like that should not be the case. Like it's an uphill battle. Go in the single entry stuff. I know it's not as appealing, but you're going to have a much, much, much better chance of returning some money in those smaller contests, single entry, opposed to the lottery type stuff. So you want to play in no matter what, if you're doing 1, 3, 5, 10, 20, you want to play in a contest that you can come the closest to maxing out. And I strongly feel that way. If you're playing 20 lineups, don't put it in the big lotto thing with 150. Put it into the 20 max. If you're playing 10 lineups, don't put it into the lotto thing. Put it into the 20 max as well. You want to play in contest, and that's may mean you have to come down stakes a little bit, but play in contests that you can come close to maxing out. It's the most important thing you can do, and it's not the sexiest thing, most appealing thing, but long term, it will pay off. I'll promise you.
Yeah, and we're still not really, we talk about this all the time, we're not really a picks and plays company, right? It's a lot about the process. When you do go behind the scenes, all you're getting that's different is the setup of Hoop is going to actually narrow down his player pool. Yes, because this show helps him work through it. He's said on the show, I'm making some changes to my player pool.
I make
and
notes.
then the exposures are on there. You'll get titles, cash core, you'll get my slate plan and others amongst all the other stuff that our team does. So you get a lot, but really what you're getting is the tools, the Stone, best tool in DFS. We have it for every sport coming across, including PGA, which is coming back soon. We've got the showdown stuff that we talked about where you're going to get a Stone for that as well. You've got Shiptimizer you're looking at here. The stack rankings for NFL have been on fire. Usually you just start with the top 10. That's a great way to get down to a single entry. I'll round out running back and just say some of the values that I'm going to risk it on. It's going to be Corum, who you mentioned, Hoop, earlier, still pretty cheap on both sites. They can get him involved. If it's not Kyron, we've definitely seen him get enough touches each week. He just hasn't really paid it off, but he's got something. So I'll go with him. Estime is interesting to me if since he gets blowing them out, which I just think what you said earlier, like I just feel like it's a Burrow day. He's going to go off, get it rolling. If it's Chase Brown plus Burrow, all those guys could get it rolling. Then you could see Estime get mixed in a little bit more. Obviously prefer Javonte, but I think it could be Estime that pops in there. And then Title, you said one more. But maybe both you said him, but Gibson. It just whatever happens. He's 5,200. It's a guy in the first game that I don't know if you'll end up needing him. He may get to like an awkward number where it's like 12 and you're pretty happy with it. You're like, damn, that's pretty good at low ownership, 12. But you do still have to wait and see how the rest of the day plays out because of it. But he's kind of cheap. He's a little bit less than J.K. Dobbins. You could obviously play both together, but I like the idea of leveraging and going to the other side and make that pivot. But yeah, those are some of the cheaper ones that I'm considering. Title, kick it back to you, man. Wide receiver.
Wide receiver's tough. I think the best way to go through is team by team to say who I think's kind of relevant, and then I guess I'll circle back and see if I rank them. So Chargers, because I don't love too much Herbert, I won't be playing too many of these guys. I do think Ladd is strong. His ownership looks to be staying in check. PPR monster at 6,600. But again, if I'm locking Chase Brown, I play in Burrow, so I like Chase and all this stuff. It's really hard to get overweight on that. Then I'm looking at Quinton Johnston, Joshua Palmer. I know people are talking about Surtain with Chase in this next game. Christian Gonzalez is another stud cornerback that plays on the outside. Quinton Johnston can't catch. Palmer's fine. They're okay at ownership, looking around like single digits. Right around single digits is fine with me. Again, I don't love this first game by any means. So one-off in guys like that, or a Gibson, defenses, etc. That's how I'm mainly going to be playing the first game and underweight. But I don't really love any Chargers. And again, I don't like Herbert, or I'm not playing as much Herbert. So that makes sense. Same thing on the New England side, not playing Drake May really. I do have a little more interest on this side. Pop Douglas, I just think is an underrated wide receiver. The problem is the snap counts, etc. They run a lot of 2 tight end sets. They have multiple receivers. They rotate in. Booty gets all the work for whatever reason. I'm fine with him, even though he is Booty. 4K on the field a ton. He's going to be a value piece that I plug in.
I think he caught a touchdown last week for us.
Yeah, I know. He's still
that was him, right?
Yeah. He's still Booty, though. He had a good game.
Ooh, 5 for 95 and a touchdown. Are we back?
Almost
Is the Booty back?
I hope I'm going to play.
I don't know if he was ever there. I can't really say is he back because he was never really there, but has he arrived? Has the Booty arrived?
Maybe. Booty's definitely a good play. Him and Pop Douglas are, I think, two solid plays, and I actually prefer them to, I think, any Chargers receiver because of their price. And again, if I'm locking Chase Brown, I like Burrow, Puka, etc. You need value. So again, more the one-offs, Booty, Douglas on that side. Denver, I'm going to be leaning into the Denver stuff. So it's really tough, though, because it's Cortland Sutton, and then they rotate 4 receivers after that. Hoops Boy, Lil Jordan, Valet, Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims. Finally, Mims' snap count keeps increasing. And again, he's always the gadget guy, the big play guy, the screens, etc. So I'm going to lean into him, and I like him a good bit at 3.9K. Just takes a couple touches, and he can house it and break a slate there. Troy Franklin, I think, solid. And Vile. I'm playing Bo Nix, and the reason I like Bo Nix too is they just have so many guys. Every single one except Sutton. Lil Jordan had the least snaps at 36%. Everyone else above 40%. Again, you're guessing on who he's going to throw to. I'm playing Bo Nix. You can eat Chase Brown and chalk around it. You just got to get the right guy, and that is why I do like Bo Nix stuff. I'd rank him I like Sutton and then Marvin Mims for sure. I'd rotate Troy Franklin, Vile. I'm still going to say Lil Jordan stinks, so do not play him. We'll see what Hoop says. Bengal stuff, real easy. Jamar Chase, Higgins, Yoshibas. And man, like Yoshibas ownership, really, really in check. I love Burrow, so it's going to be easy to get overweight on him. And he's only 3.8K. And T. Higgins, like everyone wants Jamar Chase. Of course, T. Higgins is going to be low owned, but I like T. Higgins a lot. You can play Burrow teams, not play Chase, play a Yoshi, Gesicki, or Higgins, Chase Brown. There's ways you can go that way and get different there. I know people are worried about Surtain and Jamar Chase. Surtain doesn't always shadow. Jamar Chase moves around a lot. Would I be shocked if he shadowed? No, but also T. Higgins is a beast too. So we talk about a lot on this show, especially small slates. You can't like change your whole narrative. I guess you can if you want. Personally, I don't about some guy shadowing someone. I respect Surtain to the max. What if he doesn't even shadow though and Chase has 150 and 2 and you're going to be really mad? So yeah, Chase is very strong. Cardinal stuff, because I do like Kyler. I think Marvin Harrison's strong at very fine ownership. Michael Wilson, 4,200. When I do play Kyler teams, I like him. And again, his ownership's in check. They do have Trey McBride, though, obviously. And Kyler, you can easily single stack because of his rushing upside. But in Kyler teams, Harrison, Michael Wilson, I don't love them as one-offs, I will say, though. And Ram stuff, I think Puka's very, very strong. And, I mean, man, it has been really tough for Cooper Kupp. I do not like it much at the price at all. I prefer Ladd for 100 more. You mentioned DeMarcus Robinson, though. So, yeah, 3,700 low ownership. Real low ownership. Yeah, I'll tail you on that if you got to lean there. So circling all back, I do think for cheapies, the Denver stuff, and then I'm going to be one-offing the Pop Douglas and Booty. They're just Booty's on the field a ton. I think Pop Douglas is a good receiver. Receiving is where I'll get a lot of value. We'll get to tight end too. I think there's a couple guys, but if I don't like the value at running back, I'm spending at the QB, 4 receivers, 2 tight end builds. That is where I'm going to get some of the value there.
There's not like a super exciting things to say on this slate, but I will say that you little my thunder there because you know what's going to happen. Everybody loves Henry, or they think they got this big lean because they're going to say Austin Hooper. Guess what? He's getting ownership too. So one thing I love on a slate like this is pulling that over to the cheap wide receiver, whether it's Bourne, Booty, Pop Douglas, whatever. I'm fine with one-offing those guys because they're not popular one-offs. They're one-offs that make it work when most think they're picking a tight end between Henry and Hooper in this game, and we'll get to tight end shortly. Hoop still has to go through his wide receiver stuff, but I will say my one takeaway that I always love a good line. I'm quite certain that Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow don't give a shit about him, and they're still going to throw the ball to number 1, and whether he gets there or not doesn't matter, but I'm playing him, and so are other people. I'm not worried about a cornerback shutting him down. It's Jamar Chase. So if it happens, it happens.
Yeah, it's a different way of playing football nowadays. Like in the past, these wide receiver ones were just lining up outside, and it's just like one-on-one. Can you beat the guy? Like nowadays, these wide receiver ones are moving all over the place. They're getting the ball behind the line of scrimmage. They get the end around. They just do so much where it's just so hard to factor in like individual matchups with these versus these stud wide receivers. Just a different day and age. 10 years ago, yeah, that was important. Like if a guy's going to shadow the top wide receiver nowadays, I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I don't follow it as much anyway. Like some things I'll classify it for or keep it in mind. The tidbits will sometimes have, breakdowns of it and whatnot. It's interesting to take in. But again, 3-game slate matters so much more. And to my point earlier, and now I'll kick it to you on that, Hoop, the raw points are what really matters so much. Obviously, you got to, you're going to see natural correlation because it's 3-gamer. You're going to get natural leverage spots because you're doing this and others are doing that. But in the end, you need these points. And Jamar Chase at 20 plus could be more than enough, regardless of price, depending on how the rest of the slate goes.
Yeah. I'll do the same thing Title did, kind of go through the teams. But, I don't love the Charger stuff with Justin Herbert, but I really like Ladd McConkey. We talk about props a lot. Title kind of goes through. He is the third highest yardage prop on this slate. Like he can get there without scoring a touchdown. I mean, he can get there with, I don't know, like 8 to 10 catches and 70 to 100 yards. Like that's definitely in the cards for Ladd McConkey, coming in at low ownership. Very fair price tag. So he stands out to me as a very strong individual play, probably more as like a one-off for me, because I'm not going to be heavy on Herbert, potentially fading him. But the other guys like Quentin Johnson, Joshua Palmer, like it would only be if they just hit my teams. I'm not forcing either of those guys in there. Same thing with the Patriots. Like I'm fine with those guys, Booty, Douglas, Bourne. But again, it's not going to be me forcing in any of those guys. It's going to be I'm going to play them to get everything else that I kind of want on this slate. But yeah, the Denver Cincinnati game, I think is where it's at from a wide receiver perspective, because I agree. Love all the guys on the Denver side. Sutton, Vele, Mims, Troy Franklin, really like Mims. I mean, just so explosive. When he's out there, they have plays designed for him, which is very rare for, a $3,900 wide receiver. Like he's out there to do damage, and he's done it very frequently, and they're using him more often than they have in the past, which is really nice. So his role is increasing. So to me, he's the best cheap wide receiver on the slate coming in. What's the ownership? So he's getting we're showing 20. Yeah, that's fine. I'm a 3-game slate. I really like Mims, and I'm fine with Troy Franklin. And I don't know if it'll come to anyone's surprise, but I will be off, big Jordan Humphrey today. Not going to be on him.
Yeah. On your boy. Finally moving on.
Yeah. Take a 3-game Saturday slate for me to be done with his ass.
12-game main slate. He has to mention him every other week.
Yeah. It's when it's a 12, 14-game slate, he's in. But when it's a small slate, no chance. You can't get
not doing it. Yeah, not doing it. But no, I mean, the situation there has definitely changed, where a guy like Mims has clearly come in and is playing more. So, can't really get to big Jordan today. Bengals,
I was just going to say quick on these value ones. One thing I'll do with Shiptimizer as well is just look down here. Who is it giving me some of that our ownership doesn't really have them set up for? And we already talked about Bourne. I'm fine with getting more of him. He's showing up at 8%. You mentioned just now, and that's why I was with you on the Jordan Humphrey stuff. Big or little, don't care. I'll have very little. So that would be where I want Franklin, Vile, those guys. Well, 6%, but it's not giving me much at all. But the fact he's popping in is a possibility, and this is before setting anything up. So Yoshi Voss still think is interesting. Again, we've seen this actually with the Bengals. I'll just mention this one quick because I definitely know it from experience, where they both end up playing still. That's Chase and Higgins I'm talking about, where one of them was on the injury questionable list or something like that, and then they get another guy warmed up throughout the week with Burton or Yoshi Voss himself, or what's the other dude, Irwin or whatever his name was. They'd have him. Yeah. Well, how did he get in? Higgins played. He shouldn't even got a chance because they used him all week in practice and they had shit set for him to go. And that's what ends up happening. So definitely think these type of guys are the ones that I'm interested in down here. Vile, Mims. Mims is actually getting popular a little bit, but I'm fine with him still. Big play upside. So anything else there, Hoop? If not, you could take us to tight end.
Yeah, good point from our guy Troy, though. I mean, a lot of solid momentum on the show. The viewership's up. Just need the like numbers and the subscription numbers to come up. So hit the like, hit the subscribe. Appreciate all the support. And then, just that last game, I'll touch on it real quick. In terms of the pass catchers, Marvin Harrison, 5,200 for Marvin Harrison is a very cheap price tag, and they'll target him in the red zone. If James Conner is a little bit dinged up and they go to a more pass heavy approach, he would definitely benefit. So I think he's fine. Michael Wilson's fine. I'm still going to continue to click the Cooper Cup button. It has not been fun. Like, it's clearly Puka, wide receiver 1, but I will include some Cooper Cup in there. And then just to circle back on like the Yoshi Voss stuff, if you're taking a heavy approach, a heavy stance on Joe Burrow today, you want to play everyone that has a chance of catching a touchdown. And Yoshi Voss clearly does. I mean, they've targeted him in the red zone basically all season long, even with Chase and Higgins being active. So if you're going heavy Joe Burrow, which I am personally, like I want some Yoshi Voss at 3,800. Like again, 10 fantasy points at 3,800 could definitely be enough. So in on him for sure.
Yeah, I like that call. And then take us into tight end. I already hinted a little bit at it, but everybody's interested in the battle between Hooper and Henry, and then obviously Gesicki is getting in there as well. But do you have certain takes or certain thoughts on these guys?
Man, it's a very tough position. I mean, it's crazy. The last couple small slates, it's been like, man, can we play 4 tight ends? The comments have been in the chat. I want to play 4 tight ends today. Today's the opposite. It's like, man, do I really have to click one of these names? And it's obviously Trey McBride if you're spending. I mean, he's the standalone spend. I mean, when you just sort by pricing, he's $2,000 more expensive than Hunter Henry. There's no one else to spend on the slate. So I bet his ownership is probably a little higher than we're even showing, just because if you are spending, he's literally the only guy to go to. And, did he catch a touchdown last week? We were talking about it a ton, and they said they wanted to get him one. What did he do?
No, McBride?
Yes. Oh, yeah. He sucked. He didn't do anything. So the coach talk and the quarterback talk didn't work out.
They did try. I will say they did try. It was like a post in the goal line, and Kyler just airmailed it. There's not open.
Shocker. Absolute shocker. I mean, Kyler fucking sucks, man. He's so bad at quarterback. It's insane. But it doesn't dry up after him. Like Hunter Henry's obviously a clear play at 42. It is kind of ironic that, the 2 appealing cheap tight ends are from the same team, and it's a team we don't love all that much, the Patriots. Hooper has been very involved, and at 3,200 on this slate where we just don't have much value, especially if you're playing a lot of teams, it's like hard to avoid them. I mean, the last 6 weeks, 4, 4, 4, 4, 3, 5 targets from a $3,200 tight end. Like, again, if you're single entering or if you're only making a few teams, like you can avoid it. But if you're doing 150 today, it is very hard to avoid Austin Hooper. So interested in him. Mike Gesicki, same logic I kind of had with talking about Yoshi Voss is if I'm playing a lot of Joe Burrow, I have to be heavy on Gesicki, and that'll be the case for me today. Then after that, it's tough. It looks like Will Dissly's going to play 3,700. He's been very good. Fine getting to him. Higbee caught a touchdown last week, but really didn't do much else. But like catching 1 touchdown at the tight end position today probably is good enough. So interested in him. Kroll, I guess, is the top pass catching tight end for Denver, 2,600. Not super fun. Drew Sample, 2,500. It dries up very, very quickly at this position. So it's quite the reverse, where the last 3 game slate we had, we wanted as many tight ends as possible, or the 2 game slates. Now it's like, oh man, do I really got to click a button here? It's difficult after those top few guys.
Yeah, this is a good call by Stool Pigeon DFS. Tight end is going to determine the slate.
Yeah, but the thing is, like everyone's.
Yeah,
but yeah, for sure. But it's like everyone's going to be playing the same one. So, like, will it really determine it? I don't know. It's tough to say, but it's a very tough position.
Speaking of playing the same one, Title, I'll kick it to you on this, but I mentioned it earlier. I like the cheap wide receivers for New England, but I actually like flipping it completely the other way when I go the opposite and just playing both. Just combo up Henry and Hooper. I don't think running back is that crazy. I know that we talked about Chase Brown, Kyron. We know about Dobbins. But if you're not lock buttoning, I'm not playing 100 plus lineups of Chase Brown and J.K. Dobbins or any of that stuff, then I'm fine to go with some 2 running back lineups. And I think the interesting 2 tight end thing would be where most are picking between them when I'm not using them as one-offs in the other spot. I still have a little bit more love for that. So I'm gonna play both those tight ends together. I'm going to play some Gesicki in my Burrow lineups and some without. I'm just saying, like, he makes sense in those to get different
that way. And then obviously McBride going into the Kyler stuff. But after that, it's like I don't have a lot of love trying to figure out if it's Kroll, whatever. One guy title, I'll kick it to you actually on this one. What about a little sample of Drew?
I knew you were good.
Yeah. In there too, and everyone on the Gesicki was good when Higgins wasn't in. What if it's Higgins and sample that you need now, or something like that?
I was gonna say
on the Will Dissly thing, real quick, just to tie that up. Like it's all relative, and expectations come into the season were like 0 for Will Dissly. I'd say he definitely has had a really good season when you consider the expectations coming into it. He's been solid.
Yeah, the Drew sample. I was gonna say if there was a Justin Watson on Christmas Day, my pick would be Drew Sample. The reason for that, he played 88% of snaps last week. There is no Tanner Hudson again, 68%, 69% the previous weeks. Now he's literally just a blocking tight end, but a guy that's on the field that much, that is always eligible. Random stuff can happen in the NFL for sure. Now I'm not really trying to endorse him. But in Burrow teams, if you're playing a lot, I don't think it's the craziest thing. Gesicki's obviously plays way less snaps, but he's just when he's on the field, they usually are passing. He actually is good. He's like a slot wide receiver. He's big. So I will be playing a lot of Gesicki because I like Burrow. I love your call with Henry and Hooper. Patriots run some 12 personnel they run some of the most 12 personnel out there. 60% of snaps for Hooper, like 85 for Henry. Two guys that are going to be on the field a ton. Don't have much interest in like the quarterbacks in that game in general. Dink and dumps to those two guys make a lot of sense to me. So I like Henry and Hooper, two of my favorites. I like the tight end position more than Hoop for that reason. I don't like running back much. I need value. Henry, Hooper, Gesicki, Trey McBride, obviously he is a spend up, but he could go 100. I was going to say 2 touchdowns. That might be impossible. He hasn't scored twice all year, but man, he's still one of the best tight ends in football. Clearly very frustrated last week coming back from the tunnel. They got him on camera against the Panthers. I like that game, though, so embracing a Trey McBride there. Easier to leave salary, too. Like, plug in James Conner in the flex, drop it down to Trey McBride. Haven't talked too much about that, but still 3 games is still a lot more game theory than it is on a main slate. So leaving salary is viable. Outside of that, like, it would just be Dissly. It's clearly Gesicki, Henry, Hooper, McBride for me. Dissly's coming back. He's fine, but it's not exciting by any means for me. I don't know. He's fine at the end of the day. He's a clear 5th, but I do like Hooper a lot. I like Henry a lot. I like Gesicki a lot, and I like Trey McBride a good bit too. So I'll keep it there. Like Higbee's of the world, I don't know. And someone asked Kroll and Troutman, like who's getting more snaps? Pretty much identical. Someone did say Kroll's running more routes. I couldn't find the comments. I haven't dug into exactly like the route stuff there, but if that's the case, I think they're fine. But I just would rather mess with those Denver wide receivers who are all going to be low owned anyway than I would those Krolls, Troutmans of the world.
I'll let you take this one title. Shout out to our man Sheets out there. I think it's more than fine, but how do you handle it, or what do you do with it?
For sure. I think 3 games most definitely you can play quarterbacks against. It's so random anyway. What always pops in my head, I believe it was Rams Chiefs back in the day, or Rams
100-point game in Mexico?
Yeah. 100-point game that the
Rams
defense
Chiefs,
is. So it's like any game that can score 100 points, the defenses still get there like that. I most definitely. So 3-game slate, definitely. I think you can do that. And shout out to you, Sheets. Hope you had a good Christmas. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Sheets is the man. And this is good segue here. Hoop, I'll kick it over to you. If nothing else to add, take us into the DST analysis, the big time 3-gamer. We get 6 DSTs here. Any quick thoughts on that stuff? I'll pull up the dry run here. It likes the Patriots, but it's pretty spread out across the board for ownership. You'll see.
I mean, the pricing should tell you everything you need to know about the position. I mean, this is like the second slate in a row, small slate, where DraftKings has just gone in and said, all right, the top one's going to be 3,400, then 32, then 3,000, then 2,800, then 26 and 24. They have no idea. So they're just like, all right, everyone's going to be $200 separated, and then we're just going to go from there. Yeah, I mean, I don't care. And it goes back to the point, like, yeah, for sure you can play them on a 3-game slate versus the defense. I mean, if you hand build, you're probably not going to do it. But if you're like using an optimizer, I definitely would not, rule against it. 1 pick 6 is all it can take. 1 punt return, 1 kickoff return. Just it's one play, and that could be the defense you need. So, not making any crazy stands. I mean, I think the Chargers will be popular. The Rams will be popular, but everyone's going to get ownership. I mean, the Chargers favored on the road. The Rams favored by 7 at home, facing Kyler Murray, who freaking sucks. But, whatever you get, you get. I mean, the Patriots are actually showing very popular because they're cheap, and that total is the lowest on the slate. They're showing, I think it's like mid-20s. Yeah, we're showing like 22%. So anywhere from like 22 to 25% on the cheapest defense. I don't know. Maybe that's a situation to avoid. If the Patriots are going to be super, super popular, maybe you don't go there. I don't know. It's like it's whatever, man. I don't really care what I get at defense.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I just don't think we just talked about defense versus quarterback. It's obviously very clear it's good against flex, but a ton of people play. If they're playing J.K. Dobbins, how does the Patriots, most hand builders or smaller lineup portfolios won't be wanting to put that? And I think it's twofold. One, it keeps all of them in check, to your point, so you can just sort of put a cap and get what you like, make it make sense in some cases if you want. But I do think one thing I'll note, even for the hand builders or the people asking about content for people that play less lineups, I think a lot of people do land on a nice lineup that they feel good about, get to defense and go, oh, shoot, I can't play that because of this. Yeah. And then they go move off a play they love. They 2v2 swap off something they loved in their lineup because of that. And that's just not the way to do it. We even saw the other day, it was the Buffalo Bills almost lost to the Patriots. It was 24-21 or something, and the Bills still put up like 14 DK points while giving up 21 points. It's not just about that. It's the turnovers, the scoop and scores, the pick sixes, things like that. So just think about that when you're building, and it just gets the quarterback right back onto the field. Denver defense today could crush Burrow with sacks, could get a pick, whatever, but it's just going to get him right back on the field. And now he's chucking to these guys. You could still see lineups that have Burrow with some of those dudes and then Denver Broncos defense on the other side.
100%.
Agree. And there's a case you just on the surface level, you can make a case for all these defenses like very quickly. Obviously, Chargers favored facing Drake May in play. Rams favorites at home by 7 facing Kyler Murray in play. Bengals at home favored in play. Broncos facing Joe Burrow, who has turned the ball over this year. And if you are playing a lot of Joe Burrow, like you would want to pick 6 or something to get Burrow out there to start passing right away. Cardinals facing the Rams. Stafford will take some sacks in play. And then the Patriots, cheapest on the slate, at home in play. So you can clearly just make a case for any of these defenses. And that's the main point. Like Tambo brought up, it's like you never, especially on a slate like this, want to get off a play or start swapping shit around 2v2s, 3v3s because you want to change your defense. Like definitely don't do that on a slate like this.
Right. Yeah, I love that call. So just want to bring that up, and I'm glad you backed it because I think that's too many people do that. It's just a big mistake. Title, do you got anything to add here, man? Anything else you want to mention on this slate when it comes to defense? And then also just any final thoughts?
They got to change it to super flex. Like you can get every single thing right on the slate, and then a random thing at defense costs you all the cheese. So if I had to lean into something, I lean into the home teams, but I have no clue. Yeah, it's so random. I hope they change it. Just final thoughts on the slate. I feel pretty good about it. I don't love the running back room. I like Chase Brown and then very few after that. So I don't think I won't have pretty much any 3 running back builds. If I did, it'd probably be Kyron, Chase Brown, and Dobbins. The wide receiver room, I like leading into the Denver value. That's why I'm playing some Bo Nix. And then like the Douglas Booty's fine. Then the tight end, I think 4 viable ones. 3 of them are cheap outside of Trey McBride. So I think 4 receivers, 2 tight ends. You're playing less teams. I think locking Chase Brown. I said no Herbert, Drake May. Again, at the end of the day, though, if you're playing a lot of teams, I don't think Xing out quarterbacks. It's only 3-game slate, building a portfolio, each lineup, again, independent to each other. It's so top-heavy nowadays. Every single bubble can be on the far left. That one bubble's on the far right. I promise you will be very happy. So good luck to everybody out there.
This is hard to tell. Is he talking about 2 picks or 2 touchdowns? What's the
day gonna look
like for Stafford? That's 2 picks, I think. Yeah. Hoop, do you want to cover any more FanDuel outside of the Dobbins stuff? I mean, a lot of what we talked about can apply, but is there anything else particular that stands out on the FanDuel side of things?
The Dobbins thing obviously alters the roster construction a little bit because you have a 4K starting running back. I mean, he's right there with James Conner in terms of projection on the slate, and he's $4,000. So like that alters some things. I think you're going to see Joe Burrow's ownership probably higher over there than on DK. We're not necessarily showing that in our ownership, but I think that is going to be the case. Like that's the guy people prefer, and it's going to be much easier to play him. You're going to see an increase, I think, like I said, in ownership on all the expensive guys because it's going to be very easy to play him. And the big question was like earlier, is he a lock? Not a lock. Like he's 4K. He does still have a floor. He's coming off an injury. Hard to get like way overweight on a guy like Dobbins, but that does alter things quite a bit over there. It's just going to be easier to play whatever you want. So that's really the only thing that stands out. I mean, everything that we talked about, I think is everything else outside of that is very applicable to the FanDuel slate.
Yeah. Perfect. Any final thoughts from you, Hoop? Anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
No, good luck to everyone out there. It's fun. These Saturday slates are fun. I hope we see more of them next year. I love the 2-game slates. I love the 3-game slates. Obviously, like Showdown as well. But man, the 2 and 3-game slates to me are so much fun. Right back at it tomorrow with a full slate. So the grind never stops. All the content for the 3-game slate is up. I really appreciate all the support. I mean, these Saturday slates, I mean, the support on this YouTube channel has been off the charts. And so I know a lot of you guys out there aren't members. And if you're not a member, I mean, I definitely appreciate you guys coming and watching these shows and supporting us in that way. It truly means a lot to us. And, we've been able to build this channel up rather quickly in a matter of a year and a half. And we're going to continue to keep all our videos and shows free on this channel. So just appreciate all the support within the YouTube community. Obviously, we'd love to have you over at SHIPIT Nation. Our price tags are the most affordable in the industry. But either way, love that you guys are tuning in. I mean, a ton of momentum on the show and support, and always appreciate that.
Yeah, we appreciate it. The New Year's resolution will be to get more than 200 likes when we have almost 1,000 watching. So we got to get that ratio. 35% of the people or more would be good, but it just takes 2 seconds. It's free to do. It helps us. The more we grow, the more we show. We always talk about that. We love doing these free shows for you guys, putting them out there. But thanks so much for watching. If you do want to get in, we've had a lot of people take advantage of this already. A lot of people that play NFL DFS move on to PGA after this on top of all the other sports that we cover. This is the best way to get the best of all worlds. If you join right now on what I just showed you guys here under the single sport, $399 goes to $299 or $449 goes to $349 with the optimizer. And the big thing is right now you get free all access through Super Bowl 59. So if you really want to see what it's all about, you're going to get all the NFL for main slate and showdown, all these short slates, etc. The rest of college football. Golf is back. It's what you're signing up for. NBA is rolling. Had some big nights there. Just talked about Title's big night the other night, but many members as well. And then in the showdown streets, Rio and BJ putting in the work daily. So love to see that. Our guy Nades in the NHL streets. And then Title, one more time over to you. I know NASCAR and MLB are up, but when's MMA back? It's back sooner than we think, right?
January 11th. So coming up pretty soon. And then January 18th, a huge pay-per-view card. I'm actually going. It's in LA. Me and my man Rio will be there. And 2 title fights, Umar Marab, Saruki. I mean, it's one of the best cards you'll draw up. So my man, Sweet Dreams, huge card. So yeah, MMA will be back.
Man. He's so overrated.
Him against Yuri. I know you're gonna be on Yuri.
I don't know. Maybe not Yuri's.
I don't know.
That division is just cheeks, man. That division is just garbage.
Yeah, Jamal Hill's been tweaking for sure. But nonetheless, the prizes should be big. And once MMA is back, I do always love this time. MMA is a complete grind. So this month is nice. But when it's back, it hardly ever stops. So, yeah, pretty much year-round.
Shout out to our man Jake.
My boy
Took that
Jake.
Slate last night. Love to see it. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff going on right now. A lot of momentum. It's a huge weekend ahead. Thank you guys so much for watching. We appreciate it. That's going to do it for this one. For Hoop, for Title, and for myself, ToeTagginTambo. Let's ship it!